Welcome to everyone for joining us for another Mass Medic Town Hall. Really do appreciate all of your support and can't tell you how much we appreciate having all of you show up at these events month after month. I'm Rachel Robinson, Vice President at Mass Medic, and like I said, we're just thrilled to have you here. We do have an incredible program lined up today, so I don't want to take too much time for announcements. Very quick reminder, please keep yourself on mute so that there's no background noise for the speakers. And if you have questions, we absolutely encourage them. We'll get to as many as we have time for. Please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll help moderate those for our speakers. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Brian Johnson to get started.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, gathered guests of our Mass Medic community. I'm so pleased again to join you for this program. This is our February program, our second of 2021. And I'm very excited to continue bringing on our voices from Washington, D.C. I just want to, before we get into the discussion with Congresswoman Lori Trahan, I just wanted to quickly do a couple things for you. First, I want to thank our sponsors and supporters of the Town Hall program, Greenlight Guru and the Mullings Group, two fantastic companies and members of Mass Medic. And we are very appreciative of their support of this program because it's critical in these times to continue to gather, to continue to engage, and continue to have great discussions. Today, you're going to hear from first Congresswoman Lori Trahan of Massachusetts' 3rd District. It's a district rich in medtech as well as tradition. It's a district that I hold very close to my heart, having spent a lot of time up there in the Merrimack Valley. And also then we'll hear from a man that I call the incomparable Joe Mullings. He is CEO of the Mullings Group and Mullings Group Media. He is a force on the scene in terms of LinkedIn. He's pushing the boundaries all the time in terms of content for this industry. So I consider him a great friend and mentor, and I'm pleased to have him with us. But first, I'd like to introduce Congresswoman Lori Trahan, who's been kind enough to join us in a pretty slow week in Washington, D.C., right, Congresswoman?
Yes, we're really looking to fill up the calendar this week.
So the floor is yours if you want to make a couple opening statements, and then we can just kind of jump into the Q&A. And if you have questions for the Congresswoman, please put them in the chat, and I will moderate.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to all of you for participating in this series. It's hard to believe that we last convened together virtually back in April at the height of the pandemic. And throughout the months that have passed, I've been truly amazed by how our communities, our partners in industry have come together to support our friends and neighbors. And that community spirit makes me more confident than ever that brighter days are ahead. This week, the nation sadly surpassed 500,000 COVID deaths, a somber milestone that shows us just how far we have to go in tackling this pandemic. However, the emergency medical equipment you all are manufacturing and producing has been essential to combating COVID-19 across the globe. I often say, and I'm so proud, that Massachusetts leads the world in the exports of medical devices and technologies. And the work your companies are doing to fight the pandemic is essential to our public health and it's had life-saving effects through this crisis. There is an urgent need to continue to pass substantial federal funding that puts relief directly into the pockets of Americans, that supports our small businesses, protects our supply chains, and equitably expands our testing, tracing, and vaccination efforts. This week in Washington, the House is preparing to enact more COVID relief. And so I wanted to take a moment to update you all on some of the big pieces that will be included in the package that we're voting on tomorrow. I am pleased to share that my new committee, Energy and Commerce, recently reported out our own part of the American Rescue Plan. After a 20-hour markup, we completed a package that takes a comprehensive, multi-pronged approach to expand vaccination and testing, as well as provide critical funding to support our supply chain. This package includes $46 billion to implement a national strategy for COVID-19 testing and contact tracing, including supporting the work of state and local public health departments, We also included $7.5 billion to administer vaccinations, including vaccine distribution and monitoring activities. $1 billion is provided to reduce vaccine hesitancy by supporting public awareness and confidence in vaccine safety and effectiveness. Additionally, the package provides $5.2 billion in critical funding for supply chains for COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics, and medical supplies, as well as $100 million in funding for supply chain modernization. Once the American Rescue Plan passes, my team and I will be sure to share all the specific details with you. But beyond the current package, I want to take a moment to update you on all the additional work we're doing here in Washington to respond to the pandemic. Last Congress, as many of you know, I introduced the Pandemic Production Act, which will incentivize American manufacturers to maintain domestic production capacity for medical equipment necessary to respond to an infectious disease outbreak and safeguard our supply chain. And similar to how the federal government incentivizes the production of equipment necessary to defend our national security, the PPA will fund public-private partnerships to help American manufacturers ramp up their capacity to make personal protective equipment, medical devices, and vaccines. The bill also gives greater authority to public health experts to ensure that domestic production under the PPA is being ramped up at the appropriate time and free from any political influence. And lastly, the bill requires the Secretary of Health and Human Services to provide weekly reports during a national emergency, providing full transparency and ensuring that Congress is fully aware of the use or non-use of these resources. But one such tool that we can utilize right now is the Defense Production Act, which, as you all know, allows the president to prioritize certain supplies for vaccinations and medical devices. President Biden recently announced that he would expand the use of the DPA, which is critical to our public health and our national security. And this week I had the opportunity to question witnesses at an Energy and Commerce subcommittee hearing from the 5 major vaccine manufacturers on how invoking the DPA has helped expand manufacturing capacity at their companies. I also would take the opportunity to hear from all of you on how the DPA has helped in your work and how you think we can further expand the use of the DPA in our pandemic response and future pandemic prevention. We have the opportunity to take what we learned through this crisis and enact policies that work to prevent something like this from happening again. Last Congress, I launched the Pandemic Preparedness Caucus, and that's a bipartisan group of lawmakers formed to better equip the United States in its fight against future pandemics, as well as to provide results-driven, bipartisan policy solutions to challenges presented by the current COVID-19 public health emergency. This caucus is going to take the lessons from this emergency, the COVID-19 emergency, to ensure that the United States is best situated to respond rapidly and effectively to future and emerging disease outbreaks and bio threats. Specifically, the caucus aims to focus on a myriad of topics like preventative medicine and public health equity, investments in science, our investments in research and medical technology, medical supply chain security, biodefense, and so much more. So I see great potential for this caucus to form policy solutions that drive the nation toward recovery and also address the inequities in our systems that have been exacerbated by this pandemic. We can't afford to ever again be caught flat-footed. And the work we do now will benefit our response should we encounter public health emergencies in the future. So before we move to Q&A, I would just ask that you all remain mindful of our collective need to stay vigilant in protecting ourselves and our loved ones. I know that we're all racing toward that light at the end of the tunnel, but in the meantime, we have to continue doing those basics that we all know so well: washing our hands, wearing our masks, which are now really becoming part of our wardrobe, and socially distancing. And with that, I'll turn it on over to you, Brian, so that I can hear from folks and hear their concerns.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. First of all, I think recently you actually tested positive for COVID and went through the protocols there. Did that change? First of all, are you feeling okay? And secondly, did that change any of your viewpoint on this pandemic?
What it really did for me, and it happened immediately was you're presented with even before you have symptoms, you're presented with a logistical challenge, which a lot of families can't meet. In fact, I thought immediately of how the home that I grew up in, that had one bathroom for my three sisters and me and my parents, like how would we have ever separated and quarantined properly? And that is literally the plight of, millions of families. And so there's, no question that you are really met with a pressing need so that you're not infecting, your loved ones. I was lucky. I didn't have anything beyond mild symptoms. I had a couple of days that were a bit of a struggle, but beyond that, I was able to recover quickly and get back to work. And frankly, it was my first week of ENC hearings, and so I attended all of those because there's so much work ahead. But yeah, it definitely informs how people get through this. And certainly, I've often said, just because I'm juggling the same thing that so many women are juggling, my kids are home from school, and really women, it really kind of shined a light on the fact that women are bearing the brunt of this pandemic. They're the ones that it's double, triple duty right now in terms of making sure your kids are still learning, making sure folks in your household are safe. Oftentimes they're the ones caring for people who are getting sick or need help, who've left the workforce in droves. And so I'm really focused on this committee in terms of prioritizing and accelerating the infrastructure that women need so that we go back to work and our kids go back to school.
Very well said. I guess I would be remiss if we didn't talk about, because every single newspaper article right now, especially today, is on the pace of vaccinations in Massachusetts. The governor says we're in the top 10. We're the number one for states of our size in terms of number of shots in arms. How, from your perspective, how do you feel that the Commonwealth is doing in terms of vaccine rollout?
Yeah, well, it was certainly hard to see, and this was just a few weeks ago, Massachusetts in 34th place nationwide for vaccine distribution, and that was according to the CDC's ranking. So obviously it's a relief to see Massachusetts now in the top 10. I'll be the first to say that Massachusetts has done an incredibly good job in certain facets of pandemic response. But I think that what we've seen in the past few weeks is that the vaccine rollout has been a bit of a disappointment. And I'm glad that the governor and his administration have taken swift action to remedy the multiple issues with the website, and they stood up a call center that folks, especially our seniors and our underserved populations who may not have access to the internet or a computer, can use to schedule appointments in English, Spanish, and the ability to translate into other languages. But I don't think that all or even most of the blame regarding the vaccine rollout rests with Governor Baker or his team. The fact of the matter is that for the better half of the last 10 months, the federal government has passed the buck onto states to respond to this pandemic. And it started early with the mad dash we saw in March and April to get PPE to hospitals and the bidding wars that unfolded between states and even between them and the federal government. It continued with the previous administration's refusal to support additional state and local government relief, forcing them to bear an even greater share of the costs associated with responding to an unprecedented health crisis. And we've seen that same pattern again in the early stages of the vaccine rollout, not giving reliable visibility into when doses were coming. So fortunately, that's changing. But even this administration will tell you it's going to take a little bit of time to get their federal response plan into a good enough place that vaccines are rolling out the door at the levels that we need. But we have to celebrate the miracle of having two highly effective vaccines. It's such an achievement. I'm so proud that both companies are rooted here in Massachusetts, but we must be laser focused on dramatically accelerating distribution however and wherever we can, and making that distribution equitable and fair. Well, Operation Warp Speed was successful. It did come at a cost, and we must address the fact that we have fallen behind in testing innovation, capacity building, which is central to reopening our schools and our businesses. We have fallen behind in genomic research, specifically sequencing surveillance that identifies new variants of the virus, ceding our leadership to other countries. And we've fallen behind on developing treatments that mitigate the most severe symptoms. So those are some of the things that we're working on the oversight subcommittee and the health subcommittee, which I'm so grateful that I get to be a part of and kind of crafting solutions to that.
Yeah, we are completely thrilled that you are on that on the Energy and Commerce Committee. I think it's a critical position to have a representation on there. On the E&C markup bill, there is money for PPE and other workforce development support. You know, as you probably know, we have many companies that have pivoted to creating PPE that are based here in Massachusetts. You know, and frankly, as the supply chain issues kind of get a little bit less scary with PPE, you know, we are seeing some of the supply, you know, coming back in from China. How do companies that are in Massachusetts that have pivoted to create PPE, what's the best way for them to take advantage of this money that is being released as part of the COVID relief bill, assuming it passes? Is there a role for them to engage with you on that, or how should they prepare themselves?
Yeah, no, so the American Rescue Plan takes a targeted approach to ensure those who need PPE can access it. The rescue package includes provisions to revitalize our supply chain. And as you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was just a concerning lack of PPE available to Americans and healthcare heroes. So as we focus efforts on preventing future health emergencies, a substantial stockpile of PPE is critical. You know, as I mentioned earlier, the Pandemic Production Act, which would work to revitalize American manufacturing and protect our supply chain. That's my bill, the PPA. But this is also why my team heard your concerns and fought to get medical manufacturing employees to be prioritized in vaccine eligibility in the state. I mean, we recognize the critical role you all play on the front lines of our pandemic response. And so when the American Rescue Plan is passed, we will have a greater understanding of how the funding for PPE will be used. And my team and we will be sure to follow up with those specific provisions. You know, I'll also mention that the 1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief plan includes $350 billion for state and local governments, which is long overdue, and approximately 8.2 billion of that will go to Massachusetts. So that should help, and we're here to help you all navigate that.
Thank you, and thank you. Again, your office was critical in helping make sure that medical supply chain workers were included in phase 2 of the vaccine rollout. I want to grab a couple questions from the audience. Martha Shaden, your question's a good one. Many companies in Massachusetts rely on SBIR grants, and during the pandemic, those SBIR funds were prioritized for COVID relief, as they should have been. You know, how do we make sure that companies, we need these SBIR grants to continue to roll in for other non-COVID related technologies? I mean, what are your thoughts on, is there anything that we can be done at a committee level to make sure that, you know, the SBIR program stays vital and also continues to fund early research outside of COVID?
So the answer is yes. I am a huge proponent of SBIR funding. I've seen how it's worked in keeping our advantage with our national security and with our national defense. And I know how important it is to our innovation in medicine and medical devices and all the different industries that, you know, Massachusetts has really been able to foster. So yes, I do think that right now we are laser focused on COVID, but I do think after Friday, at least the House is going to pivot, and there's a huge breadth of issues that we need to deal with, and we're trying to influence sort of the different subcommittee agendas for what we're going to be working on next. But I'm glad you flagged SBIR. It was a huge part of what I worked on in the Emerging Threats and Capabilities subcommittee, keeping that program intact, because there was a there was an effort, by the last administration to really tweak, sort of go to a Shark Tank format of using commercial companies, commercially available technologies and bringing them to our national defense and the Pentagon, which there's absolutely a need for. We have to be much more nimble and agile, but we also need companies who are looking out at a much longer horizon and thinking, really hard about what the specific needs are in terms of, in this case, medicine, medical devices, what we're going to need for future pandemic preparedness. And that is really where the SBIR grant program thrives. So I would love to work with your membership to figure out, how and the timing of us sort of taking that up, whether it's on O&I or on health. But I'm all in on SBIR. It's been a huge windfall for Massachusetts and also for our country.
Great. Unfortunately, I got a note here that you're going to have to run. I just wanted, in your new role, I know companies want to engage with you. I know you're very responsive. Just are you receptive to people connecting with you directly?
So I think might be just the former staffer in me. And then also, I worked in the private sector for 13 years. So, one of my longtime complaints is that, we don't bring industry close to the table when we're thinking through our policy prescriptions. It is absolutely essential that we talk to people who are actually inventing things and making things and employing people when we're crafting this such important legislation. And that is why our culture is to be accessible and responsive. It actually benefits us when we go into committee hearings and we can elevate, real stories of how this plays out on the ground and on our front lines in your case. And so please, we've got a great team in Washington and in Massachusetts. And, if there's something coming down the pike, if there's something that we're not talking about that needs to be elevated, please get in touch with us because that's how this is supposed to work.
Congresswoman, I know you have to run. Thank you so much for taking the time during this incredibly busy week. We so appreciate your support, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Terrific. Well, all of you take care, stay safe, and hopefully the next time we see each other, it's in person.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.
And for everybody out there, the Congresswoman's office, I will put a note in the chat bot. Please, one of the things we talked about a couple of weeks ago, last month at our town hall, was the importance of engaging our elected officials, especially our elected officials who understand the critical nature of this industry. Please reach out to their staffers. That's what they're there for. They're here to be engaged by our industry. So I just want to make another pitch for that. Alex Karabatsos at Lori Trahan's office has sent me her email, so you can contact me, or I'll put this in the chat as well. But thanks again to the Congresswoman and her team for setting this up. Rachel, back to you.
Awesome. So we are going to switch gears now to another fantastic speaker. So I would love to welcome Joe Mullings again to our program. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful supporter of all that we do, and we're thrilled to have you.
It's good to be here, and thanks again. And again, Mass Medic and Brian and the team. I think everybody on this call knows how powerful and important Mass Medic's initiatives are within Boston. It has been, I think, the fulcrum of the immediate response and powerful response on what started, we can't believe it, over a year ago. And the sort of positive fanaticism that you've built in your tenure there, Brian, I'm thankful for as well. So today I'm going to jump into the state of medical affairs, medical device and hiring going on right now around the world, but especially in the US. And as usual, Boston is the hot spot in that area. For those that are aware of what I do, I built my business in Boston in the early 90s and continue to be ever present there and fortunate enough to sit on the Mass Medic board. what I'm going to chat about today will be a little outside of the classic medical device. And for those that are aware of the work I do, I tend to be out on the edge of things, more provocative, thought-provoking than anything else. But this is all based in evidence. A lot of our work is on the leading edge of med tech and health tech. And you'll see today I refer to it as health tech. And for the first time, probably more in the last 24 months than the previous 24 years, we are going to have a substantial influence in our industry on products that fall outside of, at least for today's category, outside of a classic 510K IDE PMA world. And for some, this may be disruptive. For others, you've seen it coming. And I see a number of friends in the audience who I've had conversations with that know what's coming down the road. So let's jump into it as quick as possible. So today, what I'm going to cover is we're going to talk about the patient and the consumer. They're the same people. I want to use those interchangeably today with purpose, because you're going to see where we are managing health moving forward on our own. We're going to push into healthcare rather than looking at medical device as being pulled into treatment or therapy. We're going to talk about the critical part of finance and economics. We are right now in the midst of, I don't think anybody can predict what's happening on the finance economic side, but this is going to be very, very interesting. And then the personal healthcare and what I've coined the term intelligent consumer devices that are going to blur the line between classic cleared devices on the 510K side and beyond that, not quite into PMA products, but I do believe eventually there is going to become a category that will be adjacent to 510Ks and still have FDA oversight, but fall on the consumer side. This is just my hypothesis. Right now, I think most of us are aware of the 18% of our GDP goes towards healthcare spending. And the growing part of that, and it is growing, that GDP, almost 90% of that is towards the maintenance of chronic care. So that's a very scary number. And that's per the CDC. 3.8 trillion in annual healthcare expenditures are people with chronic mental and health conditions. Examples, heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, obesity are some of the biggest contributors. So what we want to look at is, boom, boom, good. Acute care. Most of the med tech industry has been focused a long time on acute care. And this has happened for the most part in hospitals, right? These large monolithic structures in the middle of town. They've been built as factories, but not the positive type of factories. It's come in, serve all. And they have not been built for the way technology has been accelerating, the way that we are needing to manage to an 18% GDP. It's not the ideal answer of efficiencies, cost, or outcomes. We're starting to see that get pushed out of the hospitals. It's been accelerated by the pandemic we're in the middle of, intentional or not. We're starting to realize that treating all the sick people in the same place may not very well be the ideal solution. You've seen the push out in ambulatory surgical centers. I call them focus factories on the positive side of things. I think you're going to see a real estate play coming out of private equity. I've seen hints of it already, where all these malls, all these strip malls that are now being vacated, private equity is going to get into the real estate play, and you're going to see ambulatory surgical centers that are going to focus on their specialty, whether it's ortho, cath labs, or other management of chronic diseases, where we'll be able to drive down costs, increase access, and increase the value of outcomes. That is, okay. So we are not going to replace the doctor, though. Right now, our doctors, they cannot work any harder than they're working. But what we are going to do is we're going to start to see technologies that are going to better connect us with our doctor. And we're going to provide them with pertinent data. As I chat about this today, I want you to not think about healthcare moving forward in the current formula it moves forward in. Our doctors cannot work any harder. I believe you're going to start to see services that are going to allow us to aggregate the data that is coming in off of the consumer/patient and going to inform a clinician, a doctor, or some healthcare provider in a triaged fashion. And we are going to be making the devices, the data, and provide the insight to the doctors that they can go ahead and bring on the protocols that they've been trained on. No question about that. Give me a click on that. Smart digital technologies and data that offer predictive analytics are going to be very important. And they are going to allow us to kill the monster when it's tiny. And we're going to be able to get this data off of the current device categories. You're going to start to see intelligence in nearly every device that comes out, no matter how simple it is. And that data might be as simple as an RFID chip on it, or some sort of band on it, or something that will get a large aggregate of data to provide insights for us to intervene earlier, or provide the clinician with insight so he or she can enhance their skills and their craft, because a lot of that is a craft. McKinsey released in 2020 that providers were seeing 50 to 175 times the number of patients via telehealth more than they had done before, adding that $250 billion of current US healthcare spend could potentially be virtualized. That is an early inning, top of the first, not even anybody on base yet. So I don't expect this to be a linear function. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Brian will probably support me on this, I do believe the very first reimbursement came out of the Commonwealth on virtual engagement. So that virtual engagement on telehealth does not mean necessarily sitting in front of a screen talking to your clinician. Telehealth means a connectivity to a healthcare provider where you don't have to be on site. And that could be telemetry as well as video engagement with them. So I want you to think broad on this. And each of you that are in the classic medical device, you all should be thinking about how do you enhance your category, your products, your platforms in that connected area. So opportunities emerging in other med tech fields. This is where I start to get into the health tech. Oh. So it's a consumer-driven, intelligent consumer device, which is going to allow our healthcare providers to intervene much earlier at a lower cost point and allow us to amplify what we already have in biotech, life science, and med tech. So what we're doing is we are broadening the opportunity to engage with the patient while they're still a consumer, before that becomes a chronic or acute situation. This is the mindset moving forward. This may have a direct correlation to some things. I'm going to go out on a limb here, provocative again. I believe this is going to be tied to, unfortunately, a breakdown on where you sit socially, what your interest is from a cognitive intelligence perspective, and what your resources are. And I'm not saying that as a judgment, I'm saying that as pure evidence longitudinally in decisions in healthcare, that you are going to start to see early movers move into a positive mood towards healthcare with an intelligent consumer device versus get pulled into it when you're at a acute, chronic, or catastrophic situation. It'll be a lot easier to deal with, and it will be tied directly to where you sit in the economic strata. The patient is always on. Look, one of the things that we've all seen, we've all heard, this last mile on our mobile devices offers a connectivity both inside the FDA and outside the FDA. And the devices that are going to engage with this are going to start to bend that 18% GDP curve, but the intention shouldn't be just to impact or flatten that curve out. The intention also needs to be improving outcomes and improving access. So while everybody talks about digital, and digital is certainly important, it's got to check all three boxes moving forward: outcomes, access, and value. So home and remote care, this is the way we've been thinking about it. This is the way a lot of the money coming into medtech, health tech right now, the conversations I'm having with VCs, the conversations I'm having with the early, I would call them dislocators. I've gone beyond the word of disruption. The dislocators in healthcare. We're going to have to start to think about new categories emerging, not just disruptions within product portfolios that we've been accustomed to. No, go back. So genetics loads the gun, lifestyle and environment fire it. That is incredibly true when it comes to our personal health. And with data, we can provide hindsight with products like 23andMe, what we're genetically predisposed for. We can offer insight, which is active data gathering. I come back to intelligent consumer devices. And then I can add foresight, where I can take those devices, the data I pull off of those devices, and now I can offer a predictive early intervention before I either ruin a life, I can change a life, and I can dramatically lower the cost of the therapy. Here's what I have been ideating for the last few years. My boys are older than this, but this is what I know is going to happen within the next few years. Your child is going to be 1 year old. When your child is born, they're going to have a 23andMe-like test. You're going to get a genetic disposition of what they are predisposed for, and then based upon lifestyle and environment, they can accelerate towards that. They're going to have a subscription patch on them for probably $15 to $20 a month, and that will capture data off of that child, a number of biometrics. And that data will get through via telemetry delivered to sensors within your house. And we already have all this technology existing already. And that will go to a data aggregation center that will then track that data real time over the years. And it will start to identify trends. And when we approach a control limit that needs to have a signal pushed off, we are going to have a clinician and a category that does not exist today flagged that we want to intervene early. That is where we're moving to relatively quickly over the next few years, and there's technology there. Personal health tech was already surging with wearable and fitness trackers for over $10.6 billion before we hit this whole coronavirus situation. Importantly, the transformation is playing out largely in our homes and largely in remote situations versus the hospitals or clinics. Here's where we go. We've got these already. I'll bet you half the people on the group right now have blood oximetry monitors at home because of COVID. Heart rate monitors are sitting on your exercise bike. Fitbit and Garmin, misspell on Garmin, by the way. Sleep monitoring devices, sensors embedded inside the mattress, in your pillow. Sleep health is critical. There are smart toothbrushes coming out now on gum disease. Next one. So historically, we've been wary of, and we've been talked out of Dr. Google on a self-diagnosis side of things. And I believe that is going to get pushed out of the way. I'm not talking about a neurotic approach to things. I'm talking about an empirically based, data gathered, informed situation with you as a consumer before you have to become a patient. This has all been catalyzed by COVID. We've been living in a disconnected healthcare environment. We've counted on other people to manage our health. I do believe that this situation that we've been in for the last year, and the evidence I see with investment money, and the technology I see in sensors, and the people that have built products in a data-rich environment have entered into medtech. Some of that proof has come out with Teladoc and Livongo. Right now, I do believe Teladoc's market cap makes it number 17 in the medtech industry. It's bigger than Smith & Nephew. It's bigger than, I think it ended up at $24 billion, if I'm not mistaken, the market cap the last time I checked on that. And this is an organization that really has just previous to this 5 years has been a loose connection of things, and now has become a connected example of a model on telehealth. So let's talk about what's going to drive this: finance and economics. We have had tremendous revenue slowdowns in life science and in medtech, more than science and biopharma, right? And that's because we've had suppressed revenue, delayed clinical trial activity, disjointed R&D efforts because we can no longer be in the office. And we've also had money raised and debt financing at a rate that we haven't seen before. This suppressed demand is going to come out of the gate second half of 21, and 22, I believe, is going to be incredibly robust. The evidence I'm seeing right now with a number of vehicles, a number of investments, 80% of our firm focuses in this early round, A, B, and C, more than the late round. So this is what's coming downrange. Ernst & Young just put out their firepower, I think, in January, and they talked about the industry's firepower for deals expanded 41% in 2020 as at an all-time high. The money has not been deployed yet. So if you follow the E&Y report, this is an incredible dry powder cameling up of funds that we will see when it will be deployed. I'm already seeing signs from my seat, from my organization, that the funds are now starting to be deployed even by the large strategics. This is going to be really interesting. The trend that signaled just how much capital was available in 2020 is the rise of the special purpose acquisition companies, SPACs. I'm sure everybody on this call has been following the activity with SPACs. Whether it was Omar's, I think it was $750 million, whether it was Scott Hunnikin's, who now is coming out with $200 million with Frank Litvak, whether it was Bob Palmisano, who just came out with $300 million on the SPAC side, and these were just in the last few weeks. So when you talk about VC, PE, and SPACs coming in, that's an enormous amount of dry powder that's all entering into medtech and health tech. So as you pick your career and your choices, you want to be aware of this. This money is going to be deployed at scale very quickly in different categories. So we've got suppressed need for technologies. We've got large medtech needing to buy R&D. We've got a brand new category of health tech coming out. That's the sister of medtech. And all this is going to be coming out in 2021 and 2022. SPACs have to spend their money usually in the first 24 months that they go public, and they've got to usually deploy it for very large bets. Private equity now is buying revenue. Private equity has now stepped into the CRO business as well, aggressively. Check out what KKR is doing in the CRO business on the testing in life science, biotech, and medtech as well. So VC and early stage investing always is focused on managing clinical, regulatory, and new digitally focused markets in those categories. And they never are, well, they generally aren't seeking revenue. PE traditionally is focused on revenue, but seeming to be getting in earlier and entertaining more risk in emerging digital focused health tech. PE can enter into health tech / medtech now because the pathway to revenue is greater. And when you're looking at health tech entering this business, the bets are going to be made because usually early in a health tech digital market, which is slightly different than classic medtech, whoever the first mover is gets a tremendous land grab, and it's hard to be second or third in that space. So I would look for PE to be moving into health tech, med tech, even early revenue without proving out from past historical habits because they don't want to miss the boat. And then SPACs, this is where the wild card's going to come in. This is going to be uber interesting to watch. The SPACs, the valuation, the structure, the competition against VC and PE money is going to be a shootout, in my opinion, because they can move. I see them less into PMA just by design. It's hard to take a publicly traded company that's PMA, that's a long tail. The market doesn't have patience for that usually. And if they do go in, it's going to have to be a platform buy. But what does that mean? The VCs have money to deploy. They've got to put it somewhere. And if they're getting crowded in, they're going to deploy that in the areas that they know, in the PMA products, in the pre-rev, in the devices that they know. So I think what's going to happen is more money is going to come in, less technologies to buy. It's going to be a positive outcome for medical device. So I talked about this early. This is going to change dramatically in the next 12 to 24 months. We've seen the movement from the brick megastructure in the middle of town to smaller health clinics, urgent care centers, ASCs, and into our households. We are now able to be monitored at home, cars, workplaces, acute treatment mindset to prevention to early intervention, staying ahead of the acute care and chronic care, again, the massive load on our GDP. Okay, finishing, what are the pitfalls? Because I'm running out of time here. Consumer products typically move fast, fail early, break things, and test with consumers. How does that translate to the behavior of medtech and the FDA? I think we know that answer. Consumer classically has a minimally viable product, an MVP practice. How will that translate to the intelligent consumer device market that have a direct adjacency that I think has an explosive opportunity within the medtech services? Where will we land in regards to data, devices, diagnostics, between morals and ethics, regulations, and the economic conundrums in regards to health, safety, and efficacy? Who is going to make that judgment in the passive patient monitoring when the FDA leans in? Is what is safe and ethical, what is safe and effective in regards to approval on a device in this brand new category? There's going to have to be some calls there. And that's it. That's my sprint, and I'm 2 minutes over. So great. I hope that had the brain go. My classic extruded catheter people may be pissed at me, but this is where we are. Any questions?
So Joe, we definitely have questions. So I could help kind of run a few of them. I mean, I know I have questions. I think that was a fantastic presentation. You know, the three things that kind of jump out to me as question marks, and you mentioned a few of them, are obviously security. How are we connecting these products and what's happening with the data? Acceptance. How willing will people be to have, you know, a lot of different aspects of their lives tracked for medical purposes, and, you know, accessibility for those in low income communities. We can say that this is a great opportunity to use products that already exist in a better way. But yeah, my question is always around folks who are already in underprivileged situations to have access to this kind of technology.
Absolutely, and that's going to be part social, part governmental, and also part in the consumer market. So if you look at chronic diseases, it usually immediately has the largest customer base in the lower income, especially when you go to obesity, you go to high blood pressure, you go to diabetes, right? Not even the mental health side of things. We won't even cut into that. So that is going to be, this is where I talked about it being a brand new dislocated market and a brand new impact on healthcare. So that is going to take, again, governmental, social, and I do believe the consumer markets will be able to deliver the razor blade with the device or with the ability to monitor. Now you're going to have compliance, which is going to be even more of a challenge than adoptability in that market. But we will figure it out. And the reason we'll figure it out is because the massive amount of money to be made there is going to drive the data companies. And on our radar screen right now would have the Apples, especially the Amazons. I think the Amazons are the biggest players in this. I don't think Google is going to do well in this market. My opinion, Google's never done anything well outside of search. They've not done well at commercial. So I'm going to go with the Amazons and I'm going to go with the Apples on that. On security, that is going to become, in my opinion, a utility player, or a series of utility players will break out in health tech and med tech. It's too complicated of a platform to have that built into one of the large strategics. We are not software development companies. We are not cyber companies. You're going to have a utility feature that I believe is going to be a connectivity, a toll road to everything from a surgical robot to the patient-empowered device. And then that will be a subscription model from the provider of that connected device. I don't know if that answered it, but that's my short answer there.
No, those are great. A couple of questions came in from the audience, and we've got a few more minutes. So as you just mentioned payment, I think that is a great topic to touch on. Obviously, the reimbursement model, payment options, if it doesn't get paid for, it doesn't exist in medical, right? So, are you envisioning, or could you see a world where the consumer is directly paying for these subscription services? Or do you think this is going to go through health insurance or some kind of hybrid model?
Great question. So again, I had in the start of the quick sprint I did, I said, we've got to imagine this outside of what we think it needs to fit into today, right? So when you look at the multi-trillion-dollar spend right now, I think you're going to start to see a migration where employers will subsidize this in some categories. I think healthcare providers and insurers will provide an incentive, a massive incentive on this. And again, I also believe that when you can't figure out where you're paying for something, you're usually the product. And so I see a connectivity here and a gift back to the empowerment in this, and the data off of that is going to be where the money is going to be made, somewhere up in the value chain. And I want to answer your privacy situation really quick. Let's see, 2015, 2014, almost 6 years ago to about 3 weeks from now, I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure on the island of Mallorca. I, at that point in time, would have never given my data anywhere to anybody in my mind. And of course, I was on Facebook, so I was already giving it away. Of course, I had a credit card I was giving away. I had a cell phone, I was giving my data away. But when they wanted all the data from me about me in order to heal me and then help heal others with the disease I had, I gave that data away easily. And I think we underestimate the impact of our data. And I think that's groupthink versus the ability to heal yourself, and maybe more importantly, the ability to heal other people. I do believe that as a populace, we will lose that worry about quote unquote data security on a certain level of sharing data. That's my personal opinion.
No, that was great. There were several things you just said in that are incredibly quotable. So that was perfect. So from this is a question from the audience. What are some skills to get, or flex, or angles to take as tech is kind of coming to the device space? So I'm guessing it's a question around how do, as tech, medical device companies, what are some skills to kind of be thinking about? And I would also say as employees, what are some skills that we should be looking to kind of flex up on?
Yep. So great question. We are going to have an influx of software into an industry that's never been known as a software industry before, and everything that goes with that. I know there will be people say, oh, we've been doing software. In relative contextual terms to the rest of the world, medtech has had a very small cohort of software people in it, let alone uber progressive. That's changed over the last 24, 36 months, but still the best software coming from outside to inside. So if you got a child in junior high, mid school, or high school, and you want to interest them, I would push them towards that. That is going to be the building block of those of us who grew up in the extruded tubing world. That was a good craft back then, right? Let's talk about characteristics. Upskilling, learning, and the ability to be reskilled is going to be a demonstrated characteristic that I know employers are going to be looking for. For some reason, we decided, for the most part, maybe not as much in the medtech industry, that we should terminate our learning about our early 20s and mid 20s. And that is the biggest shift that I believe that's going to happen socially over the next 5 to 10 years. Is we are going to become lifelong learners in earnest moving along. So that would be the one item that I would want to be on the leading edge on, is to be a lifelong learner in relative terms to what's happening in my industry.
Fantastic. That's great. I think that's also something that, if companies and employers and employees are both thinking at that level about it, I think there's a real opportunity to seize on. So fantastic. We are just up against time. So Joe, thank you so much for an incredible presentation and for walking us through that. I think that's just utterly fantastic. So thank you.
You bet. Thanks for the opportunity. Stay safe, everybody.
Absolutely. So thanks everyone. That will conclude our program. We do appreciate you joining us. Just a reminder, these town halls are monthly, so we will keep you posted on our upcoming date for March and the programming opportunities. If you have questions or would love to talk more about programming, please feel free to contact me at rachel@massmedic.com, and we would love to chat with you about future opportunities. So thanks. Have a great rest of your day.